Good evening, everybody. Thursday night, it must be time for Born Political. Again, this is about fifth or sixth show. Last week, it wasn't live, and I told everyone to pay attention and watch because I was really excited about the guest. I had Chief Fasaro, who was scheduled, but unfortunately, I know you guys know that I'm a state representative, and I was taken away up into Hartford till probably about 10 o'clock that night. They told us that we'd be voting early and out of there easy on time. So I had to call the chief about maybe an hour before we were supposed to go on the show. I felt awful. And he returned the favor this week because he had a meeting that he had to go to. So busy people, busy meetings. But I'm so fortunate to living in this town because there's so many interesting people to talk to. And the chief had offered somebody that's up there at the station doing the hard work. I knew him already. I'm really glad to have him on the show tonight. Again, I had to explain this is a last-minute interview, that this is just about getting to learn about the people that are in our town, around our town, and I'm going to continue to do that, and tonight will be no different. Tonight I have Captain JB. You may know him from being around town. You may not know him, and you'll know a little bit more about him after this interview, hopefully. But JB, welcome to the show. This is Born Political. It's great to have you.
Well, thank you for having me. I don't know if I'm born political, but I'm happy to be here.
Well, see, you missed my first monologue because I think every single person on this planet is political. And I believe that it starts at your birth, the first time that you cry to get attention because you're hungry or you need someone to pick you up. That's your first political move. And I think we all have that in us. I know we talked off screen a little, and we'll get to this probably later in the interview, but you have two children. Right? Is it two? You said
two boys, yeah.
Two boys. And it's probably politics that happen there. Like, Dad, how can I stay up late? Right? Can I?
True. I can't argue with you on that.
Right? So everything has a little bit of politicalness to it, I guess. So how long have you been at the town of Groton? I know you've been employed with the police department. Has it been them the whole time? Or
yes, it has. Yep. So I'm in my 26th year with the police department.
26 years. Thank you for your service, being here 26 years.
Thank you.
That's awesome. And then being born political, I always talk about where you're from, and I think that has a lot to do with a lot of the decisions that we make, and you know, even if you could come, you're not from Boston, I could tell already.
No, not from Boston.
Yeah, you don't speak like my mom.
No.
You know, and she's not from Boston either, but she picked up the accent. So you're from Connecticut, or the area?
Yeah, I actually grew up in Hamden, which is just, if people don't know where Hamden is, it's a little north of New Haven.
Yep, okay. I know Hamden.
Grew up there, figured I'd stay there my whole life, but I didn't. End up graduating from Salve Regina up in Newport.
Salve Regina, beautiful school.
With a bachelor's degree, and then right out of college, I think I got the dream job of every young kid. I worked construction for 3 years. Road construction, operating everything that you imagine. Bucket loaders, backhoes.
Operating engineer?
No, it was a non-union company. We worked on water mains, replaced water mains.
Wow.
So
what was your major at Salve? What were you
criminal
doing?
Justice.
Criminal justice. So you kind of did you kind of go into college knowing that you wanted to be a police officer,
Yes.
or was it?
Yeah.
So it wasn't a lawyer dream or a judge or
No, I knew in college I wanted to be a police officer, and back in that time in the late '80s, it was a very, very competitive process. You know, you'd show up for a test, and there'd be 300 or 400 people there for two positions. It was very, very competitive in the '80s.
Now, are you the only police officer in your family, or is this something that, you know, a lot of people, they do the trade that their dad did. They're a plumber or a police officer, or you had an uncle, or are you the first? Or
I am the first in my family. My father-in-law was a police officer as well.
Oh, but you didn't know you didn't know you were going to meet your father-in-law.
No, I didn't. No.
So you didn't have a role. There wasn't or was it something that struck you when you were young in school that you saw or met a police officer, or is it just? Because I find that, you know, a lot of people, they make the decisions on what they want to do, and it's not usually what they end up being. And it sounds like you kind of had it set in your mind maybe in high school? Or?
Yeah, you know, part of it was probably because my father owned a business in New Haven, and my father was not politically active, but my father was active in the community. So he got to know a lot of the police officers, and people would stop by his business all the time.
Okay.
And it was a warehouse, and you know, I'll never forget the day that the officer came in the warehouse on a horseback.
Oh, geez.
You know, so as a young kid to look up and see that was, you know, was pretty cool to see that.
On horseback in New Haven?
Yeah.
Oh, I see. I didn't realize they had. Do they still have horse?
I think they still have them. Yeah, they used to the stables used to be out by Yale University off of Whaley Avenue up in that area.
Okay, that's not something I had no idea that they even had that.
Yeah.
So you grew up in Hamden. You're born in Connecticut. So you've
Born
been
in Connecticut,
here.
yep.
And then your family, did they are they from Connecticut, from Hamden too? That's
My father was from Massachusetts and my mother was from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So,
okay. And brothers and sisters?
yeah,
or-
I have a brother that still lives in Connecticut and a sister out in Arizona and my other brother in Florida.
So family of four. So you,
Yep.
and that's another, in talking to people and doing these interviews, I realized that how much your brothers and sisters, or the size of your family, or even what part of state you were from, and sometimes depending on even the position you were in your family. Like I was a middle child. My mother was middle of 9, and the first 4 people I interviewed were like middle children. You can't do that because you have 4.
I'm the youngest, so.
So that's a completely.
Yeah.
I haven't had a youngest yet. I've had an only
There you
child
go.
too on the
You
show.
got your first youngest.
Yeah. So do you think that, like, and I say political, and it doesn't have to be, your politics, Democrat, Republican, or how you feel about, budgets. But I think a lot of skill is learned in your position in the family. Sometimes it's forced on you. You're the oldest brother. Mom and dad walk out the door and say, "You got this. You're old enough. You take care of them."
Mm-hmm.
And where the younger brother would never experience that, but now you're under the rule
Yeah.
of this person that's probably only 3 years older than you, or 4 years older.
Yeah,
So-
well, I mean, I guess the older siblings pave the way for you, right?
Yep.
And I think as you start to progress, and hey, I was born in the '60s, so I mean, I think you get to the point where, your parents are like the 4th kid. It's easy, right?
Yeah,
They let us eat the gum from under the chairs, and where the oldest one couldn't do any of that stuff. They paved the way for us, and
Yep,
I think
yep.
for our parents, it was, it's probably easier for the last child.
Yeah, I think, and even in my own experience, we had 2 children, but the older one will usually pave the way. They soften the tension sometimes,
absolutely.
because it's all the worries, and when you're a parent, you're so afraid of your kid getting hurt or learning something bad, or you teach them the wrong thing, and you're very careful, and then you start to realize that they're going to figure a lot of this out by just kind of figuring it out.
Yep.
Yeah, and now, so your family today, you don't live in Hamden anymore. We talked off air.
Nope.
You're local.
I am local. Yep.
Yep.
Married with 2 boys. One's in college. One's a freshman in high school.
Oh, so you're getting on the other side of things too. Like you
I
don't have
am.
to, no more babysitters, and no more figuring out any of the.
No more babysitters. Yeah.
Yeah, and now do you guys, when you're growing up, did your family? You said your dad was out and about a lot, and they had, I'm sure they around town. Were they political? Did they talk politics in the house, or was
No, actually, not at all. Not at all.
No.
Yep. Neither my mother or father were political.
Yeah, and it's funny enough because my mom, I think I consider her very political, and women's rights. I got a lot of the opinions I have came from my mom. My dad, after I did the first show, I had asked my mom, is he a Democrat or Republican? My dad doesn't talk about politics. He doesn't care to. I know he has opinions. I'm sure he does, but I think sometimes maybe from his point of view, he didn't want to interject them or make us have a decision. I think he just thought, we'll figure it out, and whatever you think, he's.
Yeah, I mean that sounds pretty accurate for my household. I mean it's and not to side steer, but my wife is actually quite the opposite, right? She's a Democrat, and she's opinionated, and she's a hardworking person.
Yep. And so my stepfather is a Republican, and my mom is pretty much bleeding blue. But I think they found out a lot of compromise in that too, and that's the whole point of the show, was to try to bring people together, I think, and make sure that we understand that we want 99% of the same things. Right. I think it sounds like you've gotten a lot of the things that you wanted, because I think the American dream is to have your 2 kids. One's graduated from college, and one's going in, and that's what we all want.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
right.
It's
And we want them to have better lives than we have, right? I mean, and I'm sure my
Exactly.
parents were the same way.
Exactly. So we talked off air a little bit, and I told you that I interviewed Mary Jo Riley. We talk about this town and the people and the talent that we actually have in our town. And Mary Jo was my first Division I athlete. She was from Thrive 55. I'm not going to call it the Senior Center anymore because it's different. I actually love the name. I like saying it. And off air we talked about, I asked you if you had any hobbies, and you surprised me a little because I wasn't expecting race car.
Yeah.
And you like wrenching on them and you're building them. So tell me a little bit about that. I mean, how'd you get into that?
So I think a lot of my like for cars came from my uncle. So my father's brother was always into cars,
Yep.
and he always had a Porsche. He had Corvettes. He always had something, right?
Yep.
So I think that's kind of where it started. And my father was very handy. He was always working on his boat, so of course I would help him fix
Yep.
the engines on the boat. And
I might be able to use you.
yeah.
I have a boat with a little bit of a problem. No, I'm kidding.
And I've never been afraid to take anything apart and try and put it back together, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
have as a kid, did I have some spare parts lying around? Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that happened, right? Did
Yeah.
I upset my father a few times because the lawnmowers didn't work after a while? Yeah.
Yep.
But I learned by taking little things apart, carburetors, engines, and just seeing if I could put it back together. And now as an adult, it's like YouTube is the greatest thing going, right? I mean, you can build anything you want, so I got into the cars doing it started off basically as I in the back of Auto Week, I had an Audi as a younger kid. I was working
Yep.
after college, and I had a used Audi, and I saw an advertisement for the Audi Club, and that they were going to do an open track day up at Lime Rock, and I went up, and man, I'll tell you what, I was done after that.
How old were you then?
24
Oh,
years
so
old.
you had a little bit of money in your pocket maybe because you were working construction.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
you
right.
we talked about that off air too.
Yep.
I think, and I do believe this, because I think everybody has an inner race car driver in them. Like, you saw that as a police officer. Some people get on the road and they're trying to practice the Mario Andretti. But for me, it's a dream that I'd love to just do it. But it's so much work to get there, and it's so much money and time and effort. So I think it's more than just you wanting to go and drive a car fast. You have to be passionate about a lot of different things to be there.
Yeah, but an easy way to do it is go to Lime Rock through Skip Barber. They have open track days, and they have
Yep.
they have a whole infield up top where you can go do skid control clinics in the wintertime. Right now they're doing ice schools. So
Okay.
you can slide around on the ice and learn car control. And that's where the Audi Club started, really. It was a car control clinic.
Yep.
So we did a lot of field exercises, learning what a car feels like under ABS braking. And then they introduce you to the track, and you go out with an instructor. You're not out there on your own, right?
Yep.
You ride with an instructor until the instructors feel you're comfortable.
Now whose car is it?
It's my own car. So you can do it with your own car.
Oh, so you can bring any street car there?
Any street car, as long as it can pass a mechanical inspection.
Okay.
Prior to, you can bring any car you want to, they call them HPD, High Performance Driver Education.
Okay.
BMW clubs do them, Porsche Club does them, the Audi Club does them, and there's a bunch of other private organizations that do
Anyone
them.
go there with a rusty F-150? That's kind of what I'm sporting
Yeah,
right now.
you might be limited on the F-150, but
Two-wheel drive. That's fun in the ice.
yeah, well, you could do it in the winter schools. Yeah, you could take anything you want on the winter schools.
So that's a lot of that is for it's almost like a safety class at that point.
Absolutely, yeah, right. And it's a great thing to take your kids to if they're getting their licenses for the first time.
Yeah.
Is some of those car control clinics. It's a great opportunity for them.
So when you left construction, I know you said that you had done that for a few years, and then when you went to the academy.
There was a small gap, not to interrupt you.
Oh yeah,
So,
I'm learning.
I had a job offer from the state of Connecticut while I was working construction,
Okay.
working for social services. So I started off with social services in Connecticut as an intake worker, and then moved into their fraud investigation unit. So I
Okay.
did that for a bunch of years, and meanwhile, all the time I was working construction and even working for the state, continually testing or trying to take tests when they became available for entry-level police officer positions. And I think in the beginning I was probably too focused. I wanted to stay in the Hamden, New Haven area,
Yeah.
and I didn't open up my boundaries, which I probably should have done sooner in my testing process. But I guess I was, Hamden born and raised, and I wanted to, bleed green and, green and gold and stay
Green
in
and
that area.
gold. I'm green and gold.
Well, yeah.
New London.
New London, yeah. So Hamden, the Dragons, right? I thought I'd
Yeah,
stay
yeah.
down there forever, and my now wife pushed me to explore outside of the area, and
No, is she from Hamden?
no, she's actually from North Adams, Massachusetts.
Okay. So that's somebody that had moved around. And I find that intriguing too, because I made the humongous jump from New London to Groton and was sick to my stomach when I did it. I mean, I was such a New London guy. I thought I was never going to leave New London, and I still love New London. My heart is in New London in a lot of different ways. But after 27 years of being a part of Groton, and then be associated with with the police force and know a lot of people around town, I don't think I'd want to live anywhere else. I really don't. But I think it's the initial move, and for me to leave from Groton from London to Groton and have that kind of be that big of a deal for me is almost laughable now when I think of, especially the community I live in.
Yep.
How many folks do you meet? Especially, you guys police a whole different community because not many, or I'd say we're the only community in Connecticut that has an active military base with the population that we have. Where you have folks that move into town that don't know where the police station is.
Right. We're actually in Groton. It's well, I think it's the only active military base in the country where most of the housing is in the town, not patrolled by the military itself, right? So most of the Navy housing is right off of Route 12.
Yeah.
So it's one of the few, maybe the only one in the country that has that.
And is that that's kind of jumping ahead to where you are and in the position you're in now. It sounds like a lot of the things you did. People say, well, I did construction, but I'm not sure. I always wanted to be a police officer, but I'm sure being around equipment and being around road construction and changing pipes, you probably had a good idea of what road traffic would do, or what you needed to do to help guys out that were, or guys and gals out that are digging holes on the side of the road.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that job taught me how to work, right? So it was we were at a non-union company. They were at the time we were getting paid union wage, which made it great, right? When you think about that in the 90s, you're getting paid union wage.
Bacon,
But we worked through all the conditions. The tornadoes that occurred in Hamden in 1989.
Yep.
We were out in West Haven working through that storm, right? There was laying down temporary steel pipe, and the storm it's thundering all around us, and we were like, we need to get in, and the boss is like, you get in, don't come back tomorrow, right? So it's taught me to work in all different kinds of conditions.
It is funny. That is definitely something that hasn't changed in construction. we still do it at Hillary. We have deadlines to meet. We talked about that off air.
Absolutely.
If you have a purchase order from the United States Navy and they want something at a certain time, that's what you do, and that's what we try to do. Now, so construction was one of the things. Then I always wondered, not always, because I just found out you did the race car. So now you're in the academy, and part of that is how do you drive a car, right? Don't they teach you, the rules of the road, or maybe some high-speed pursuit stuff? Did you surprise anybody, like with some of your?
I don't know if I surprised anybody. I mean, I didn't have any real issues with it because a lot of it was the car control stuff that I had been doing for a handful of years prior to going to the academy. So a lot of it was, the braking, the backing, the high-speed driving around corners. I mean, and if you understand, understanding lines on a track, right? A turning point, an apex through a corner, track out point, when to accelerate, when to brake. Once you understand the dynamics of a vehicle, it just makes it easier. So it made it easier for me going into the academy.
Yep. So you get behind the wheel and you're doing your first.
Yeah, keeping the car balanced, right?
And you have there's probably some guys that maybe came from the inner city that were, public transportation people maybe, and didn't really drive cars often. So with it, did you find that, or did mostly everyone that showed up at the academy?
No, there was a pretty good mix. Some comical moments, to watch people try and drive at high speed and spin the car around and not be able to take a car through a corner, and it was comical at times. But everyone eventually got it, and no one failed. So.
Oh, no one failed.
No, not at least in my class. No one failed the driving portion. Not too many people do. So.
Yep.
It's not overly hard, to be honest with you.
Oh, okay. I watched Chips and all that stuff. I just assumed that it was something, like some high speed stuff. But and obviously it's probably mostly about safety and how to and I think when people think about police chases, we all get what we learn from movies, like most Americans, and I think it's most people think you're just beelining and trying to stay behind who you're chasing, when most of it is trying to protect people from not coming in through an intersection or getting in the middle of a crash. I think a lot of it is in mitigation, where I think a lot of things happen where they're breaking off chases now because someone's just driving.
Right, there's a lot of liability in it now, right?
Yeah,
I mean, and a lot of time as they say, the juice is not worth the squeeze, right? And some of the chases aren't worth it right now for misdemeanors or even minor motor vehicle violations. It's not worth, because if they crash or if you crash, and you hurt somebody else, it's
or
you know,
yourself, or
yeah.
and that's one of the big debates that'll be happening in Hartford anyway. And how far do you go? And there's never the perfect right answer for things like that.
No, there isn't.
Just
Right?
it's like I think the intentions were there, but it seems like the only report you never hear about the high speed chase that ended well, right? 350 million people live in our country, and the only chase you'll hear about is the one that went tragically wrong. When
Correct.
obviously with the amount of people that live in this country, there were a bunch of things that happened that day.
Yep.
But it's that's part of the born political thing I talk about. We absolutely concentrate on the 1% bad things that happen, and I know you see a lot of good up there. Even the way that we've worked together. You said off air we talked about you replaced Joe Sastry, right? That's
Sastry, correct.
Sastry, and I knew him because he used to come in your position in front of me as a council member and just basically give us what the budget was and the new equipment they're trying to do. And you guys been able to upgrade equipment and make sure and get yourselves into a position where interfacing's working, and that's the way computers change now too. I think as a council member, I used to say, wait a minute, didn't we just get radios 10 or 15 years ago? And that used to be okay. Like, that was something
Right.
that, 10 or 15 years, you'd have townspeople coming out saying, why in the world are you guys looking for new radios? I got a radio from 1935 that I still use and it works, but that's all changed. Right?
Sure, especially in the police communications side of things. I mean, you look at how fast technology moves, and when we progressed from our current radio system to the state radio system, when you see those mobile radios or portable radios in the officers' hips, those are basically, that's a computer.
Yeah.
I mean, and they're not cheap to replace. They're not cheap to fix.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it's a necessary evil that we have to purchase. And like anything else, electronics, it has a shelf life, right?
Yeah.
And those things are exposed to all kinds of elements out there. So,
Well, and then being on the council too, you learn a lot, and a lot of the people around town, you understand what the public will go by and things that'll annoy them. That they'll say, I went and I saw a police car here. They're running traffic, but then they have the hood up and the car's running, and it's been running for 3 hours. I don't do that with my car, and and I asked the question at council, and then somebody that's very familiar with the situation was, okay, if we close those doors and we have those lights going,
Yep.
It's not about me jumping in and feeling cool when I get in. It's more about me getting a call and being able to actually move the car because the battery's not dead.
correct, yeah, right?
yeah.
Because, I mean, you think about what we have for regular cars, and then basically the police car is a little step up from a regular car, right? You might have a heavy-duty alternator, maybe a bigger cooling system in it.
Yeah.
Kind of like they say in the Blues Brothers movie, right? Cop tires, cop suspension, right?
Yeah.
But, the electronics that we add to those cars, and it's never ending, right? So you talk about we've added all the lights to the cars, right?
Yeah.
Those all draw off the electrical system in the car. Then you have the MDT.
Yeah.
If it has a radar unit, in-car cameras that we're going to be progressing into very shortly. That's all big draw. So as those cars sit at construction sites, like people see with the hood open, and it's an effort to keep, you want to make sure everything is still operational.
Yeah.
And then we want to make sure that the car stays cool too, because not as,
There's a
you
lot
think
of
about driving
electronics.
around, right? Driving around, it gets air circulating through the
Yeah.
car to keep the engine cool.
Yeah.
If it's just sitting idle, yes, the fan works, but a lot of times when it's 100 degrees out, that fan's just sucking in
And I
hot
think
air, and you want that air to escape.
Exactly. And when I've worked on these budgets, that's why I think it's really important for people to hear explanations like that, because as townspeople, even when I first got elected, as looking at council, and you say that car only has 120,000 miles on that police car. Why? My car, I took till 300,000. But if you're letting something run for 24 hours, it doesn't really have 120,000 miles on it. And you have these, it's like it's something where, one guy gets out, the next police officer gets in, shift after shift, 24/7. And those are the types of things that I think really come into play. In your position now in communications is trying to explain in budget for software changes, because I hated it because I didn't understand why do you guys need more software, or why do you?
Everything is software driven.
It is.
Even a lot of the cars, when you look at technology, even your own personal car, right? A lot of times when you bring that car in for service, they make software changes to your car while it's in the shop. I mean, they plug it into the OBD2 port and
Update
make
it.
some changes, make some updates, whether it's transmission shifting, fuel programming. I mean, police cars are no different, right? But like you talked about, a lot of the police cars are on the road 24/7. You know, once in a while they may get an 8-hour shift off,
Yep.
but a lot of the times everything's kept now. If you look, a lot of newer cars have hour meters in them,
Yep.
so they don't keep track. So police cars, you know, their hours are through the roof
Yeah.
versus the mileage, and and I know that people complain about that, but idling is actually worse, right, than driving around itself.
Yep. And I think, but that's one of the things that you learn by going to all the meetings. And I think it's important that we get that side of it. And you also, I don't want to. We're getting almost close out of time. I told you this is going to be real easy and fun.
Wow.
But so you worked on technology-wise. You worked on the cameras for the office. I remember being on the council and voting on it back then. And so we're fully implemented in Groton and have been, correct?
Correct. So we're coming up on a renewal for our body worn cameras now. So it's a 5-year contract with Axon.
Okay.
Yeah, I was in the grassroots of that, got
Yep.
into the weeds and got that going. We experimented with several other companies before we decided to go with Axon.
Yeah. How's that been, like, overall? I mean, I think, how's it been with the department overall? Was it well accepted, or was it?
Initially, I think there was, well, I shouldn't say there was. I mean, there was some, hesitancy. I think people
Yep.
were a little reluctant, but I think it's a big benefit to,
I've seen
it
that
solves
too.
it solves a lot of problems. Whether
Yep.
right, wrong, or indifferent.
Yep.
If someone comes in to make a complaint, we can either validate it or, show them the video and
Yeah. I think a lot of people were shocked because there's people that I've talked to people that didn't remember how bad or blatantly, obviously bad they were. And then they actually corrected themselves. They said, well, I thought maybe I was a little out of line. And I think it helps both ways, and I think
it absolutely does.
There was a lot of anxiety. I remember, being on the council early, there was a lot of, why should we do this? And I think, and even officers I talked to today say, I love the camera. I feel like it's a level of protection for me. And the only thing that I'll say about what you guys are doing to our police officers is, I don't know how much more room they're going to have. When I see a police officer walk into a restaurant, I'm like, how do you sit down? Like, there's so much stuff on them now.
Yep.
And I'm sure that's all going to stay, and you guys will come up, or somebody will come up with something else to add, where maybe it's a whole computer that straps to their back. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I mean, it's you're absolutely right. I mean, they're carrying more on their belts now than they ever had, and a lot of that stuff is required. We have to,
And that's just the way it is, and right, we're moving on. No more. Used to have just a billy club and a pistol, I think, and handcuffs, right?
Yeah.
And now it looks like a whole tool belt. So we are already out of time.
It was quick 30 minutes.
Quick 30 minutes, JB. You made it fast because I think what's interesting is being up at the being as a police officer and living out of town locally still. I might not see you around everywhere, so we don't talk about hobbies, and I might not see you here or there. But it was great to sit down. I think the town learned something today. I learned something. So guys, well, again, a great show tonight. Maybe you may see the chief on here sooner or later, but we'll go through the whole town. You're going to see a lot of people that live in Groton, that work in our community. Tonight, I want to thank you, JB, for coming in tonight. I really appreciate it. And next week, I'll see you guys on Born Political. We'll be live again, possibly with the chief, or who knows what's going to be next. Great seeing you guys. We'll see you on next Thursday. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh, that was great.